Welcome to The Honeydoomers, the podcast where two newly married horror movie lovers discuss the genre's iconic, obscure, and just plain absurd films. I'm Sky.
And I'm Joe.
And we're The Honeydoomers. All right, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, or welcome if you are a new listener.
Welcome, welcome.
So this episode, we are going to be doing another Alfred Hitchcock horror movie. We are going to be covering The Birds.
Caw.
So let's get right into it. So The Birds came out in 1963. It was, of course, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and the screenplay was by Evan Hunter. So for the cast, Tippi Hedren played Melanie Daniels. Hedren was a fashion model when Hitchcock discovered her from a commercial she did, and she starred in this movie, The Birds, for which she won a Golden Globe, and another Hitchcock movie, Marnie, in 1964.
She was hot.
Yeah, she's very beautiful. She had many other film and TV roles, and she even has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She is still alive today at 90 years old.
Still hot.
Yes, still beautiful. She was married to Peter Griffith, an ad executive, not Peter Griffin from Family Guy. And he was also a former child star. And for 9 years, they were married. And they had one daughter, who is Melanie Griffith. Melanie Griffith is, of course, an actress, and she has done many films, probably most notably Working Girl in 1988. Also, Melanie was born in 1957, so she was not named after Melanie Daniels from this film. It is just totally separate. And if Tippi Hedren is Melanie Griffith's mother, then that, of course, makes her grandmother of Dakota Johnson. Dakota Johnson is probably most known for 50 Shades of Grey. And she is the daughter of Melanie Griffith and Don Johnson, who is also an actor.
Really carrying on the family name there.
Yeah, and I feel like you can definitely see the resemblance between Melanie Griffith and Tippi Hedren, and I think you can kind of see it with Dakota Johnson.
Maybe a little bit.
Dakota looks a lot like her dad, but
yeah.
They're all very beautiful women, so. Then we have Rod Taylor as Mitch Brenner. Taylor was an Australian actor who did many films, including the 1960 film The Time Machine, and he was also the voice of Pongo in 101 Dalmatians in 1960. He passed away in 2015 at the age of 84. Jessica Tandy was Lydia Brenner, Mitch's mother. She was an English-American actor who has received many accolades for her performances, including an Academy Award, 4 Tony Awards, a BAFTA, a Golden Globe, and a Primetime Emmy. Some of her notable works include Driving Miss Daisy, in which she played the titular character, and Fried Green Tomatoes. She passed away in 1994 at the age of 85.
So she was, 53 in this movie?
She was old enough to be his mother, actually. They were very careful about that. I think she would have been very young when she had him, but I do think that she was old enough to be his mother, even though she didn't look necessarily old enough.
Pretty surprising to learn, because as soon as she popped up on screen, I just thought it seemed
unbelievable
that they were trying to pass her off as his mother.
Yeah, but no, she was old enough to be his mother. She just looks younger, and he looks older maybe, yeah. We also have Suzanne Pleshette as Annie Hayworth. Pleshette was an American film, TV, theater, and voice actress. She received several Emmy nominations for her TV work, including for the character of Emily Hartley on The Bob Newhart Show in the 70s. She passed away in 2008 at the age of 70. And then finally we have Veronica Cartwright as Mitch's younger sister, Kathy Brenner. She is an English actor who was 14 years old when she played the 11-year-old Kathy. She has since had roles in the science fiction horror films Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Alien. She also had TV roles in ER and The X-Files. She is still alive. She is 71. And her younger sister, Angela, was also a child actress who played Brigida Von Trapp in The Sound of Music. All right, let's get into the interesting facts. So the film is loosely based on Daphne du Maurier's novella of the same title. This was the second du Maurier piece that Hitchcock adapted for the screen. In 1940, he directed the film Rebecca, which was, of course, based off of her novel of the same name. Hitchcock had told the screenplay writer Evan Hunter to create more characters and a more elaborate plot, which it seems like he did, considering he made it into a full-length movie.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that book looked like if this was the more
more
elaborate.
elaborate. Yeah. It would probably focus a lot more on the birds and a lot less on the relationship between the characters.
Yeah.
One of the themes involves entrapment because the attacking birds trap people in their homes. I thought this was kind of fitting considering we've all been kind of trapped in our homes. So makes it even a little more scarier right now, maybe.
So spooky.
Yeah. Most of the birds in the film were real, but there were mechanical birds creating, and they cost $200,000, which in today's money is $1.7 million. Ray Berwick was in charge of all of the live birds in the film, of which there were 3,200. And he did a lot of the catching and training of the birds himself, including the gulls, which were caught in the San Francisco garbage dump.
Was there any animal rights back then?
I'm sure there were, but I couldn't find anything about there being a big upset about all of this.
Yeah, I doubt it, but no one cared back then.
I mean, I don't know about birds. The birds were fine. The special effects shots of the birds attacking were completed at Walt Disney Studios by Ube Iwerks.
Ube.
I don't know if that's his name, but he actually designed Mickey Mouse. He was nominated for an Academy Award for special effects for his work on the film. The film actually received mixed reviews. Some critics panned it for being too perverse and sadistic. They thought it was too unnecessarily gruesome for audiences, which they would roll over in their graves if they saw the horror movies that came out today.
Yeah, later this might be panned for the opposite, but
not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough sadism happening. Yeah. So during this movie, there was actually controversy around Tippi Hedren and Hitchcock's relationship. Hedren claimed that Hitchcock made sexual advances at her, which she rejected, and that following her rejection, she was injured during an attack scene with glass cutting her face, and she was also misled about an attack scene where mechanical birds were replaced with live birds at the last minute. These claims were brought up only after Hitchcock's death and have never been proven, though Hedren's co-star Rod Taylor did support them. However, in a 2016 interview, Hedren claimed that Hitchcock's advances didn't occur until the filming of Marnie, which was the year later.
And is that what severed their relationship then?
I
mean, did they work together?
No, those were the only films they worked together on. Hitchcock tended to sign contracts with actresses and actors that he wanted in a lot of his films, so even if it had happened on The Bird, she was probably obliged to star in the next movie anyways. Her daughter, Melanie Griffith, claims that Hitchcock's abuse had affected her as well because because she was a child when her mother was acting in these films, he gave Melanie Griffith a wax figure of her mother, Tippi Hedren, in a coffin when she was 6 years old. So, yeah, a lot of controversy there, Yeah, just a lot of stuff you maybe don't want to know if you really admire Alfred Hitchcock, but also maybe not the most surprising thing. Anyways.
Yeah. Next topic.
The author, Daphne du Maurier, did not like the film because the location was changed from England to Northern California. A real incident was actually referenced in the film in August 1961, which was just a couple years before this movie. Birds began attacking a community in Capitola, California. Apparently, they had eaten a toxic algae that made them behave strangely. And they just they weren't killing people, but they were just like running into buildings and stuff.
Like some mad bird disease or something?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't read a whole lot about the incident. There was also a poorly received TV sequel, The Birds 2: Land's End, released in 1994, which is a long time after this movie, 31 years. And it featured Tippi Hedren in a supporting role, but not as her original character. A bird named Archie, I love this fact, this is my favorite one. A bird named Archie disliked Rod Taylor so much, he would attack him even when the cameras weren't rolling. And I thought that was funny that they mentioned that, because how would the bird know if the camera was rolling or not?
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
you've trained the birds to attack. They don't hear action the same way we hear action.
I mean, if you're feeding an animal to do something, the animal's probably just going to continue to do it.
I just thought that was so funny. Even when the cameras weren't rolling, yes, because the bird knew that the cameras were off.
And action. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, now.
Now.
Yeah. There is no musical score to the movie, which, did you notice that? Because I knew that, and it was extremely obvious knowing that in my head and watching it.
You know, I didn't know that, but knowing that now, I definitely realize it.
Why some scenes seem to go on longer than
drag.
Yeah, and when if there was music, it maybe wouldn't have felt that way. Yeah.
Put some more drama into the scenes, maybe, but maybe that was the purpose. I don't know.
Yeah, the only sounds were, at one point, Tippi Hedren plays the piano. At one point, school children are singing a cappella. And then, of course, we have the bird sounds, which were not just bird sounds. They were actually created by an early electronic musical instrument called a mixed trotonium, which is why they kind of don't sound like birds.
Yeah,
not going to lie.
They really don't.
But they do sound ominous. But yes, they don't really sound like birds. And you mentioned that a couple of times, and I thought that was funny because I knew this fact.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the movie summary and then a couple of our thoughts, of course, while watching it. So the movie opens up and Melanie is going into a pet store in San Francisco. In this very first scene, Alfred Hitchcock makes his cameo. He walks out of the pet store and he is walking two dogs. They're actually his dogs. They're white terriers named Jeffrey and Stanley.
He looked kind of like a stuffy guy.
Yeah, he is kind of a stuffy looking guy. Yeah. His dogs were very proper looking.
Oh, yeah.
So she goes in, talks to the pet store owner. We find out she's waiting for a mynah bird to arrive. And that's when Mitch Brenner walks in and he sees her and he asks her if she could help him find a lovebird for his sister for her birthday. She pretends to be a store worker for some reason and tries to help him. And of course, she knows nothing about birds. She ends up accidentally letting a bird loose in the store, and she and the actual store owner are kind of fumbling about trying to get this bird.
Yeah, those clumsy women.
Yeah. And eventually Mitch is the person who gets the bird back in, of course.
Yeah, I mean.
And Mitch reveals that he actually knows Melanie Daniels, and he knew she didn't work there, and he was playing a prank on her. She doesn't know him. He says that he knows her because he saw her in court for a prank that she had pulled that ended up causing damage, blah, blah, blah. He leaves, never even tells her name. So she goes downstairs, gets his license plate.
Yeah.
And here's how we find out, actually, if you will listen to episode 1 when we were asking how you learn anything about a person's license plate, we kind of find out. So she gets his license plate. She calls the newspaper that her father owns and talks to someone who works there.
My daddy owns
the newspaper. And what she says is she has the person she talks to call the DMV to get information about the license plate, basically. So she also, before she leaves, she has the lady order lovebirds for her to pick up the next morning.
Yeah. Is she initially attracted to him, or?
Maybe, or, I mean, it also kind of sounds like she just wanted to get back at him maybe a little bit. I mean, she was doing something nice, but also just to acknowledge that she figured out who he was. So the next day, we see her with the lovebirds, and also pay attention to what she's wearing in this scene, because she will wear it for the rest of the film.
Yep. No wardrobe change.
It is a green dress. Rest of the film, that is what she's wearing.
Lots of olive green going on throughout this movie.
Well, and so it was actually, the green dress was an homage to a green
goblin?
I was going to say something from Psycho because I thought that I'd read that, but then
There was-
Psycho was in black and white.
There's no color in
I don't know.
Psycho.
I do think though that I do think it has something to do with that. I didn't write that fact down, and now that I'm saying it, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, sorry.
Someone look it up.
I apologize.
Yeah.
So she goes to Mitch Brenner's apartment, drops the birds off at his door with a little note. A neighbor who walked in with her told her, he's not here, and he's not going to be back till Monday, so I would not leave those birds there.
He vacations every weekend.
Yeah, at Bodega Bay, which apparently it's about 60 miles north of San Francisco, and
Now, pardon my ignorance.
it's not real.
It's not real. Okay.
Mm-mm. Bodega Bay is not a real place.
So Hitchcock likes making up cities in California.
Was the other place not really? Oh, wait, I think Bodega Bay is real.
Okay.
One of them wasn't real and one of them was.
Okay.
This one is real, actually.
Yes, Bodega Bay, real.
He probably should have made it up, though, because those people were probably not happy to be the premise for this movie. But
Yeah, kind of probably ruined their local
economy.
tourist economy. Oh, maybe it didn't, though. Maybe
It probably
helped
made
out.
it better,
Yeah.
honestly. People love Hitchcock. But anyway, so she ends up driving up to Bodega Bay with the lovebirds. She finds out from the post office that he lives across the bay.
Wait a second. We need to go back.
I know. I was trying to get past it. This scene where she's driving, because she's driving up the coast, and it's like a little coastal road.
Yeah, and she was flooring it the whole time.
We spend a long time on that scene watching her drive up the coast.
And
yes.
what about it did I dislike?
Her driving?
No, not her driving.
The sounds? I don't know.
No, not the sounds. It's the back shot of the two birds in their cages. Remember, they were leaning with the roads?
Oh, that was kind of cute.
No,
You didn't like that.
That can't be why that was put into the movie, to be cute. But that was the effect.
I thought it was to show how her driving was kind of erratic.
Maybe it was how bad humans
Well,
treat birds.
To put it into perspective, we find out later that Melanie's kind of like a rich socialite, being the daughter of the owner of a big newspaper in San Francisco. So I think that was just to kind of show that
She's a wild child.
she's a little wild, yeah. But
All right, so we're at the post office.
she finds out from the post office that he lives across the bay. She also decides to frame the lovebirds as a gift for his sister, who we found out it's for her birthday. So she has to stop at the school teacher's house to find out the girl's name, because she doesn't know his sister's name.
Yeah, the post office clerk or the clerk
The
that
post
she
office
asked.
clerks were not helpful at all. I mean, they did tell her where the school teacher lived. So she goes to the school teacher's house, who is Annie Hayworth's, and she tells her the name is Kathy. So Melanie addresses a card to Kathy for the birds.
Knows how it's spelled and everything. It's amazing.
Oh. I don't think names had so many differentiations in spelling back then, but I mean, I could be wrong.
Yes, it was a bland world.
I mean, names have gotten a lot weirder, and you know that. So she actually rents a boat to take to Mitch's house, since it is across the bay and there's only one road, because she wants to surprise him. She doesn't want him to see her coming. So, real quick, the fisherman.
The fisherman.
Yeah, it's just one. I was trying to make it singular.
This is true.
But who helps her with the boat is Doodles Weaver.
Is that his real name?
Yeah, I don't know. That's his stage name. And that is the uncle of Sigourney Weaver from Alien, Avatar, all major. So I thought that was really interesting. He has a very tiny part, but anyway, so she takes her birds on the boat and motors up to his house. She just walks right into his house and leaves the birds there.
Because she sees he goes out to the barn, and his mother and sister drive off in their olive green truck.
Oh, yeah. And she leaves the birds with a card for Kathy. She gets back in her boat and she paddles away with an oar so he won't hear her. And then she decides to stop and watch him as he goes into the house.
And hide in the boat.
And hides a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, as he comes out of the house again, so she tries to get the boat going to drive off. And as she's fumbling with the motor, he gets his binoculars, Mitch does, and can see her fumbling with the motor. And
Yep.
that is just a hilarious scene, I'm not going to lie.
Yep.
And she eventually motors off, and then she can see Mitch driving his car and basically following her the whole way to the dock. So the whole plan with the boat was just useless.
Yeah.
But as she's coming up to the dock on her boat, a gull attacks her. A
Yep.
gull swoops down, gets her right in the head.
She bleeds
She
a
starts
little bit.
bleeding.
Yep.
So he takes her to the Tides restaurant. So, little quick fact about Tides restaurant. The owner of the restaurant, his name was Mitch Zanich. He is actually the reason that Mitch Brenner is named Mitch, because he wanted to have some sort of homage paid to him in order for them to use the restaurant. He also has a small speaking part in the film, but I could not figure out who it was. There were a lot of speaking going on in the restaurant, so I couldn't figure out which one was him, but he is in it. While she's at the restaurant and they're like tending to her wound, she finds out that he's a lawyer, and she lies and says that she was actually coming up to Bodega Bay anyways to see her friend Annie Hayworth, the school teacher, rather than coming up just to deliver the birds. While they're there, Mitch's mother comes in and she meets Melanie Daniels and they invite her for dinner. So she goes back to Annie's house because if she's going to stay for dinner, she cannot drive back to San Francisco. So she rents a room from Annie.
Yeah, just so happens that Annie...
Yeah, Annie was trying to, well, school teachers don't make that much money. She's got to rent her room out.
Yeah, well, she's spending all that money on cigarettes, too.
Yeah, she smokes a lot. And then, so she rents the room, and then she goes to the Brenners. When she gets there, Kathy, Mitch, and Lydia were checking on their chickens because the chickens won't eat.
They're not eating.
And when they come in, Lydia calls the man who sold her the feed and is kind of arguing with him about it. And she finds out that another man, Dan Forsett, his chickens won't eat either. And they think that all of the chickens are getting sick.
Yeah, because at first they thought it was the food or the feed.
Yes, but Dan Forsett had a different brand of feed. Yeah. So things are getting suspicious.
The chicken flu.
So while they are having dinner, Kathy invites Melanie to her birthday party the next day. Melanie says no. And then Mitch and his mother are in the kitchen, and Mitch's mother is clearly not very fond of Melanie. And she brings up an incident that she had read about in the papers about Melanie apparently swimming in a fountain in Rome naked. Yep. So she is no good for Mitch. Mitch actually ends up talking to Melanie and brings up the fountain, and she gets really angry. But she also admits that she doesn't know Annie Hayworth, and she did come up just to see him. But then he brings up Rome, and she gets angry and drives off because she says that's not who she is and all this stuff.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of scenes like this that just kind of happen.
There's definitely a buildup of characters that has to happen in kind of a quick way. So a lot of scenes of just dialogue that tells a lot of backstory.
Yeah.
So when Melanie gets back to Annie's, she finds out that Annie used to date Mitch, but Lydia basically drove them apart because Lydia is afraid of being left alone. So she's kind of got a bit of a hold on Mitch.
Kind of psychotic.
Yes. Lots of mother-son relationships in Alfred Hitchcock's movies.
Yeah.
I'm no therapist, but I think Hitchcock might have some issues. Yeah. Anyways, Mitch actually calls Annie's house to talk to Melanie, and he invites her to Kathy's birthday, and she agrees. And as she's going to bed, they hear a sound, and a gull flew into Annie's door and is dead on the porch.
Yep.
Do you remember what they said? Annie said, "Poor thing must have got lost in the dark." And Melanie goes, "Annie, it's not dark outside. It's a full moon." It was so it's just one of those little lines that was to build suspense, and it just comes off really corny.
Yeah.
So anyways, the next day at the birthday party, Mitch and Melanie have this dramatic talk up on a hill with a great green screen in the back for the coast.
Yeah.
And we find out stuff about Melanie, like her mother abandoned her.
Oh my gosh,
all this stuff just to make us kind of like, I guess, like empathize with her a little bit because she's kind of a wild child. She's kind of spoiled. She's rich. I don't know.
My life's so hard.
Yeah.
I'm rich and have no mother.
Yeah. So I guess I guess it's to see how Mitch would like her. I don't know. But anyways, they go back to join the party and some birds attack.
Surprise.
Yeah, birds fly down, attack the children. Children go off in every direction instead of towards the house.
Yeah.
So we have to go save them. We get all the children in the house.
All the adults have to collect the children.
Yeah, and so now they're starting to realize something is definitely going on with these birds. So Melanie stays for dinner at the Brenners because Mitch doesn't want her driving home to San Francisco. While they're eating, birds come down through the fireplace and fill the room. And
were they like finches or something? They were small birds.
Sparrows, I think, is what they were little ones. Basically, the only thing that happens in that scene is the birds are kind of like flying around and attacking, and they honestly just go into another room to get away from it.
Yeah.
And then
did it scare you?
No, it did not. This movie does not scare me. I'll be honest with that up front.
Yeah,
but
a little underwhelming. But I mean, it's birds, so.
Yeah, I think it depends. Someone who's afraid of birds, that'd be terrifying. Would it scare me if it happened in real life? Absolutely.
Well, yeah, but
it's just hard to.
But think about this.
Translate that.
What if it were the bats?
The bats.
That'd be scarier.
I don't know if it would be.
I don't know.
Bats are cute. Cuter than birds.
No. All right.
Anyways.
Next scene.
So the next scene, the house is cleared, the birds are gone, and the sheriff comes over, and he's basically completely useless. He says he can't do anything because they're birds.
Yeah.
I mean, what's he going to do? And
get out your BB gun, maybe. I mean.
Yeah, he also doesn't really believe them that the birds attacked. He's assuming they must have, like, disturbed the birds in some way, whatever. Melanie stays the night at their house.
Ooh.
And in the morning, Lydia goes over to the Forsett farm. So that was the man with the chickens, to see what's going on with his chickens. At the farm, she goes into the house, and it's kind of a mess. And she goes into the bedroom, and it's like a complete disaster. There are dead birds in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm. And
then we see Mr. Forsett, and he is dead, and his eyes are pecked out.
Pecked out.
Yeah. That is gross. I thought that was well done.
If there was some music in there, I think it would have been scarier.
I agree. See, that's the thing. I think horror movies now use music so well to convey that tension.
It was a silent scene, basically.
Yeah, it was. It was completely silent. She didn't even scream.
No, she didn't.
She runs out in complete shock, doesn't tell the farmhand, just drives all the way home to Mitch's, and that's when she tells the story.
Yep.
So Mitch leaves to deal with that situation that she just refused to deal with. And Melanie stays with Lydia. And, at one point, before Mitch left, he kissed Melanie goodbye if we want to stay on top of their romantic relationship.
Which I didn't have any
it was,
concern for. I mean.
Yeah, I get what they were trying to do, but yes, they kissed, so they're whatever they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then Melanie's dealing with Lydia, and Lydia basically kind of goes into some sympathetic story, but she's also just really, really worried about Kathy, who is at school. Mm-hmm. So Melanie says, okay, I'll go see if Kathy's all right. She waits outside because this is like a one-room schoolhouse. It's just a room with children and Annie.
Yep.
And so she waits outside, and like the recess equipment, birds start kind of like
crows are there
flocking onto it, and just sitting there. Melanie notices this, freaks out, goes inside, and tells Annie kind of what's going on, and they decide that they're going to get the children out of the schoolhouse as quietly as possible and then make a run for it.
The best thing to do is to go outside, right? I mean,
well, so the reason that Lydia was so concerned about Kathy was because the schoolhouse has so many windows. And at Dan Forsett's house, the reason he was killed by birds was because they had flown through all the windows in his bedroom. So I get the concern. It was believable enough. So they all run and
That's
it's just a mess. The birds start attacking the children as they're running.
Yeah, our next big bird scene.
Yeah, and it is...
Children are falling.
Yeah, children. Yeah, so Kathy's friend falls. So Melanie gets the friend and Kathy into a car, and they just kind of hide out there until the birds go away.
Cars have a lot of windows.
I realized that there are many other scenes where they're in places with windows yet seem to be fine.
Yep.
So it's definitely a bit of a plot hole, perhaps.
Yeah.
So we don't really know what happens after this. We just know that Melanie ends up at the Tides restaurant, and Kathy is with Annie. Kathy...
Yeah, how did
we
that
don't
happen?
know. Because, so we find out that, so the bird attacks, like, have lulls, like, they'll attack, and then they're fine.
Yeah.
So I guess they must have just waited for the birds to go back to normal, found Annie, and had her take Kathy. And the friend, I think, went to her, like, her parents' house or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's all we really know. Melanie, at the Tides restaurant, is talking to her dad on the phone. An ornithologist, which is a bird expert, Mrs. Bundy, hears the conversation, claims that birds don't attack, blah, blah, blah. She also calls Mitch to tell him where she is. He ends up coming. There's this big argument in the restaurant about whether the birds are attacking, if it's the end of the world, all this stuff.
Yeah, stop talking about it. My children are here.
Yeah. And basically what that does is it gets the ornithologist to say, if it is true that all of the birds are attacking us, we have no hope because there are so many more birds than humans on this planet.
Yep.
It's just to build that suspense of, like, there's no way of stopping it. So, and, sorry, I read a note that I had, which is funny. So the next scene, the birds start attacking again, and we're watching it kind of from the Tides restaurant window at a gas station.
Yeah, they attack, like, as soon as the mom and her two children walk out with the drunk guy that's to lead them out of town.
Yeah, they start attacking.
They start attacking because they know, the birds knew that everyone was talking about them.
And that's what's so funny because it does seem so intentional.
Yeah.
And a gas attendant or a man getting gas is, like, attacked. Gas starts leaking all over the ground.
Leaks down the hill.
And then a man lights a cigar.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, it causes this big explosion.
Yeah, he goes up in flames.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely a lot more death in this movie than in Psycho, and a lot more, like, visual.
Well, the way
deaths.
things... It had to be, like, the beginning of, like, the Final Destination. Like, with the amount of things that were going wrong, it was like something...
Well, my favorite part is that after the explosion, we zoom up to the sky to see how big the explosion was, and then you see birds.
Yeah.
And it's just like, our plan is working. Yeah. It's like there's...
Well, they were trained to do that, so...
Yeah. They just looked so like, yes, it's all happening.
Yeah, and that's kind of the...
And then, so this, I believe, if I had to guess, is the beginning of dumb things characters in horror movies do. Alfred Hitchcock sets the precedence that the main character has to do something incredibly stupid. So what does Melanie do? She runs out of the restaurant and traps herself in a phone booth.
A lot of windows.
Yeah, all glass.
Yeah.
But the phone booth is like 5 feet from the restaurant, and she just traps herself in it for no reason. And she's in the phone booth. We see birds attack. Eventually, Mitch just helps her out of it and back into the restaurant because there's like a lull in the birds again. The birds kind of dismiss.
Things were like crazy there for like a minute.
Yeah, but that was just so dumb. I can't. So when they get back into the restaurant,
a weird scene coming up.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of just, I don't know. I guess just again more suspense. Like now the characters are starting to turn on each other. The woman with the kids who kind of freaked out earlier, she gets up and blames it on Melanie. Says all of this started when you got here.
And then slap.
Yeah, the Melanie slaps the woman.
And
then that's it.
I guess that was the climb. Once again, I mean, it's like a lot of lulls in this movie, and then maybe climax. I don't know.
So since there is a lull, they decide to go to Annie's house to get Kathy so they can go back to their own house. Well, at Annie's house, Annie is dead.
Dead.
And she is in her driveway.
Yeah, on her stoop or something.
And Kathy is in the house at the window just crying.
Yeah.
And it's not funny,
by a
but
window,
it is a little
again.
bit. Yeah. Stop. They take Annie's body into her house and get Melanie's car, which is still at the school, and go back to the Brenner house. On the way, Kathy explains that when the explosion happened, they decided to go outside of the house to look at what happened. Why? Again, more stupid decisions. And Annie was attacked, and Annie heroically pushed Kathy into the house, and that's how she met her demise, basically. So I go back to the house, board up all the windows and doors, and basically just wait around for something to happen.
Yep.
At one point, we hear all the birds outside trying to break in. We have a big scene of Mitch going back and like reinforcing a bunch of boards as the birds are trying to break in. That's really it. The lights go out, but then the birds go away.
Yeah, the birds cut off the power.
Yes, the electricity is gone.
Well, birds are like pecking through like walls now. They're
a door that was boarded up on the outside. Suddenly they're about to get through. These are some very crafty, determined birds.
Yeah. And
so
that's another thing. Why? What?
Who knows?
Yeah, what's
I don't know. Well, exactly. So later, everyone is asleep in the living room.
Oh my God.
And Melanie hears something, and she thinks it's coming from the attic.
What could it be?
So she goes up to investigate. She goes to the attic. When she gets there, there is a hole in the ceiling.
And birds are everywhere.
Okay, I was going to build up some suspense.
Well, sorry.
What could it be?
Yeah.
Who did that? Yeah, you're right.
The movie must have rubbed off on me. I'm sorry.
So
there.
Yes, we flash like she has a flashlight because the electricity's off. Flashes it over. There's no full moon tonight, so it's not bright enough.
Yeah.
And it's all it's like hundreds and hundreds of birds, and they all fly at her. I do think that was the scariest moment, was seeing all those birds. If there's anything close to a jump scare in this movie, it was that.
But then it's ruined by the cheesiness of Melanie realizing this and then saying, I'm going to close this door behind me.
She didn't mean to. She backed up against it. She's not even screaming, which that's what drives me nuts. There's no screaming in this movie.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be screaming. So about this scene, when she's being ravaged by the birds, how they kind of got that effect was they actually attached live birds to her clothes by long threads so they could not get away from her. And she was actually, I think this is the scene where she received some injuries. The phone booth was the scene where she received the injury from the glass. Yeah. But I do think she also received injuries from the birds in this scene. I mean, how could you not? Like, even if they're not actually attacking you, it's still a bird.
Yeah, I mean, there's some scenes
tied to you.
There's some scenes too that, like, there's real birds actually biting them.
Yes. I'm sorry. I keep getting the image of the scene with the kids running and the birds, like, attached to a little boy's like collar and just like its beak. That just keeps popping up in my head because it's so funny, even though it's not, but it is. Because it almost looks like it looks like a prop.
Yeah.
But
all right.
Anyways,
we're in this.
Yeah, we're in this attic for a long time, and she starts saying like, Mitch, come help me. Like the quietest voice ever, but he hears her.
Yeah.
And so we hear him like kind of coming up the stairs like, Melanie.
And then he's like is kicking the door with her limp body laid up against it.
She has like fallen on the ground. She's on the ground, basically like unconscious. And he's like kicking the door. Eventually he gets it open and just drags her body out of the attic.
Yeah, it's pretty lame.
And it's just kind of funny. Like it's so... it's just so much. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, so he drags her out.
She's like barely alive.
Apparently. And she is pretty cut up and stuff, but it does make you wonder, like, how many birds does it take to kill a bird?
Yeah.
Like, so anyways, they carry her down, and when she wakes up, she starts swatting at the air like she's still being attacked by the birds. So now we are assuming that Melanie has kind of lost her mind.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of taking care of her. They give her some brandy.
Yep. Some fire water.
Yes. They decide that she needs to go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So Mitch goes out to the garage to look at the cars. First, he turns on the radio and finds out that there have been a couple of smaller attacks in the area, but that it really was just concentrated in Bodega Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Which that actually lessens the fear at this point. I guess that's kind of giving you the hope.
Yeah.
But we also find out, what's funny is we find out that there are roadblocks around Bodega Bay.
Yeah, because if there's one way to keep birds in,
it's the road. Blocking off the road.
Yeah. Lock the roads off.
That's so true. Oh, God. I think it's to make sure people don't go in. But it does. And I guess then they had the other side of the highway open to make sure people could get out. Because I was thinking, if they have roadblocks up, how are they going to get out? Because they had to leave Bodega Bay to get to the hospital. But,
yeah, because Mitch wants to get to the hospital because...
Yeah. I mean, they had just blocked off for people to get in. Because, the roadblocks aren't doing anything about the birds.
Yeah.
But, so, he gets the car out. He decides to use her car instead of their truck because it is faster.
Mm-hmm.
But her car is a cloth top.
That's true.
So dumb.
Yes.
I still cannot get over it. At this point, by the way, the birds are not attacking. The birds are in a lull state.
Yeah,
so the entire outside of the house is covered in birds, but they're just not doing anything.
Just chilling.
And so they eventually get her in the car, and Kathy decides that we must bring the lovebirds with us.
Yeah.
They haven't hurt anybody.
No.
So they bring the lovebirds, and it's just the whole family in the car with the lovebirds. Lydia's kind of taking care of Melanie, so we kind of wrap up that as like Lydia now is okay with Melanie now that she has been almost killed by birds. And they drive off, and the birds watch them drive off,
Mm-hmm.
and then it ends.
That's it.
We never find out what made the birds act this way.
Nope.
Which I think is very clearly intentional, because I think a lot of people find it more stressful to not know. It's more,
I guess.
it's a mystery quality, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, let's do some final thoughts and opinions.
I'll let you go first because
So it's definitely not, I don't find it scary. And personally, I find this storyline much less intriguing than that of something like Psycho, because I like the psychological aspect of a serial killer or the mind of someone who is, a bit psychotic or psychopathic. And we don't get that because these are birds. These are animals, and we also have zero understanding of why they're even acting this way.
Yeah.
So I don't find it super scary. I do think it does a good job of a lot of things, though, particularly like the things that made it, made critics pan it for being too perverse are actually pretty cool for a 1963 movie. I mean, the guy with his eyes pecked out, the explosion right like over a man's body. I mean, I was like, wow, we've upped the game a little bit for sure. So for my rating, my rating is higher because it is very hard for me to give such a classic movie, and one that I know scared a lot of people when it came out. My grandmother refuses to watch this movie.
Yeah.
She is so terrified of it.
And before we give the scores, just remind people kind of how we do it.
Oh, yeah. So it's out of 10. I don't have like a set of criteria that I'm giving points for. It's kind of just off the top of my head. We're just trying to let you guys know where we think it falls. I'm going to give a score, and then Joe is going to give a score, and then we'll give you a couple's rating, kind of an average of both scores. And like I said, my score for this one is going to be a little high just because I cannot give Alfred Hitchcock a lower score just because of what this movie still did for horror movies. So anyways, I'm giving it a 7.3.
Out of 10.
Out of 10.
Okay. My turn.
Yeah.
So I'm not as nice as Sky is. I think Hitchcock kind of rode the coattails of his success with Psycho. I think this movie really wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for Hitchcock's name. I really don't think it holds up in time like Psycho did or does. It's not scary. Birds aren't scary. It was boring.
This did have a more well-known cast than Psycho did by a long shot. Just putting that out there.
Okay, sure. I don't know them. It wasn't interesting. Honestly, a 6.9 is where I'm at. And I think that's high.
It is high. No, I agree. I think mine's really high. And I'm worried that later when we start to look at how the movies rank against each other, it's going to feel too high. Yeah. But it is what it is.
But so what? A 6.9 for me and a 7.3 for you.
And a 7.3, so
7.1.
7.1.
And that's where it's at.
Yeah, I think it is worth watching if you are a horror movie fan, because again, I think there's something to be said about movies that set the tone for modern horror, which this did. Yeah. And Psycho did as well. Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at. I mean,
yeah, definitely give it a watch if you haven't seen it. It's kind of, you almost just have to. You have to see it once.
Yeah, so this kind of ends our early nostalgic episode.
Yeah, our Hitchcock, our foundations of horror, if you will, or modern horror, I guess. So, yeah, we're done with Hitchcock.
For now, maybe.
For now. Well, most of his other films, these are his only actual horror films.
Oh, that's true.
So,
what are we doing next?
So, next episode, we are going to be doing the first My Bloody Valentine, the original from the 80s. And then the week after that, we'll do the remake right in time for Valentine's Day, which, of course, is February 14th. So, that'll be really fun. I'm really excited.
I'm excited.
All right, everyone. So thank you so much for listening. Please give us reviews, give us 5 stars. That'll help us out. If there's anything you want to hear, whether it's a movie or if you want to hear more interesting facts about these movies,
or any facts we missed.
Know. Yes, let us know. That's really exciting. I love learning movie trivia. So yeah, just let us know if you like what we do, and we really, really appreciate it. Please stay tuned for our next episode. And yeah, so just last thing, gonna remind you of the advice we have. So a lot of times people tell newlyweds and couples to never go to bed angry. Our advice is always go to bed scared. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.